So hello and welcome everybody to another Sacred Wisdom podcast. In this podcast today, we are going to discuss Lucifer and Venus. And how did Lucifer become connected to Satan? And it seems to be an inversion that's happened historically in the actual sort of Luciferian connection. And I am joined with the amazing Stephen Denman today. How are you doing, my brother?
I'm doing very well, Zach, and I certainly hope all's well and good with you.
Everything is super duper. Lovely to see the sun here again. So first and foremost, let's go into where this sort of period of where this sort of transition happened, in the sense of it was back in the Roman period. So let's go there.
Well, I'd say it's all connected to the formation of early Christianity in the Roman Empire. We have to understand that Lucifer was actually the name for the planet Venus, was known as the morning star, and actually translates directly from the Latin language as the light bringer. So Lucifer was seen as, or perceived by the Roman people, therefore by Roman generals, Roman statesmen, Roman emperors, as the light bringer, and was therefore connected or linked or associated with our yellow dwarf star, the sun. So if you like, the sun of the heavens, the sun of the cosmic heavens, you know, at the very center of the solar system, beaming the warmth and the photons of energetic resonance down to planet Earth. And it was seen as a very important aspect of the cultural identity of the Roman people within Roman folklore, and for the whole of the Roman state and the Roman Empire. But it's very interesting to note that when you look at the Old Testament, and you go to the book of Isaiah, in Isaiah 14:12, it states very clearly, "How you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning, how you are cut down to the ground, you who weakened the nations." So it's interesting from the perspective of the Judeans, the Hebrew tribes, how Lucifer, and interesting to note that the word Lucifer in the Hebrew language is Hallel, Helel, which therefore also connects to the word hell, which, you know, fire and brimstone, the subterranean reaches where, you know, the souls of the damned are sent, and Lucifer and his demons obviously torment or cause harm to all these different souls who've been terrible individuals. So that's interesting, that contrast. And here we have the Roman Empire, you know, officially adopting Christianity, because the collapse of Roman pantheism, the collapse of the use of Mithraism, which was a sun cult worship or a solar cult worship from Persia, which is the Islamic Republic of Iran today, was actually then adopted by the classic Greeks and then by the Roman people, and therefore the Roman Empire, and they tried to integrate Mithraism into the Roman pantheon. And this started over many, many generations to become very unpopular. And obviously there was mass persecution of Christians, but eventually, as you know, without getting too much into the intricacies of the historical narrative, it became officially adopted by the Roman Empire as a control mechanism, because it was seen if they officially accepted Christianity and could control its historical narrative, obviously the Roman people would be much more compliant, as obviously many of the populations in the Levant or Western Asia and the Middle East would be, and obviously eventually in other parts of the Mediterranean and Southern Europe and so forth. But yeah, the transition from really Lucifer being the morning star connected and really with the planet Venus and being the light bringer. So we have to remember that in the Roman pantheon, Venus Pantheus is the female form of this kind of sort of aspect of this astral deity, this conceptual understanding. So the planet Venus in the evening comes out, but in the morning time it is known as Lucifer. So that's the masculine, obviously, form of the very same aspect. So it's very interesting to note that there was this genderization also to do with the planet Venus, and the connections to what we can class as evil or malevolence, and ultimately the sense of understanding what demons are, or negative entities, or astral spirits, that are all on a sort of resonant wavelength connected to this archangel Lucifer, who fell from heaven in this flash of light because of the war in heaven that took place and was cast out. And literally that casting out process with Lucifer actually then birthed what is known and is what we call it today, Satan. And that, in the Hebrew language, Shaitan, it means the opponent, the adversary, that which is in direct conflict with your own natural self, with your own sentience, your own awareness, your own consciousness. And so really Satan is the result, is the default vibrational result of Lucifer falling from the celestial heavens and being chained into the subterranean reaches of planet Earth, but not, shall we say, in a corporeal biological sense, but in the lower astral of of what we class as the 4D holographic reality of the astral plane, and the resulting, shall we say, thought waves and malevolence of Lucifer is Satan becomes the opponent, the barrier.
Yeah,
there's a lot of metaphysical connotations connected to Lucifer and the idea of the Most High becoming the Most Low, in sense falling from the celestial heavens, from somewhere perhaps in the solar system. And again, I'll put it out there as a question, and it's just a speculative question. Is Lucifer, as the planet Venus, also connected perhaps to the planet Saturn or Satan and the hexagonal vortex and in the Saturnian South Pole, right there in the center of our solar system? Is there some kind of hyperdimensional and metaphysical connotation or connection that we're not aware of, that is sort of outside the purview or academic range of Western science, but perhaps is known to ceremonial magicians, perhaps to people like Edward Alexander Crowley, who most know as Edward Crowley, and Austin Osman Spare, who was also a Western occultist and ceremonial magician, and many, many other individuals, and connected to the secret societies. And that kind of knowledge is known within the echelons of Western occultism and perhaps Eastern occultism, but is kept away from, Joe Public. Again, I'm just putting it out there as a spectator.
And it's very good to put out. It's very credible. It makes a lot of sense that in that way. And when you say the celestial heavens, do you see that as the astral realm, the astral plane? Because that's the way I
think it's a crossover. I think it both connects to, perhaps you would call it the outer electromagnetic perimeter of the heavenly kingdom. We can call that celestial hyperspace, which itself connects to the higher astral. And obviously you have the higher astral, the lower astral, then you have the infernal regions of Hellel or Lucifer, hell itself, where the location of fire and brimstone, the lakes of fire.
Yeah.
And I think it's again another strange and quite unique contrast is we have to remember that Venus Pantheus was the Roman goddess of love, who functions to encompass divine love and eloquence and beauty and desire and sexual interactions between men and women, fertility, prosperity, and also being victorious in relationships, especially in marriage, where there's a sense of harmony between the husband and the wife. And that's very, very different to the whole concept of the morning star, Lucifer, who then became the archetype for malevolence and absolute evil. Very interesting, almost the exact opposite. Again, it's almost that sense of yin and yang that you get from, say, Chinese mysticism, the positive and the negative.
And what I find so intriguing is the way the word demon was actually originally a Greek word called daimon, which then means deity. So again, another inversion. So the inversion of this dark demonic god or dark demon into this kind of negative connotation. I find that
the word, there is two versions. There's daimones, the actual word demon in the Greek language. Its initial etymology actually means the provider. So a demon provided a message. Right. So a demon is sent, if you like, as a test, especially upon those who have a profound journey as a soul personality, who've incarnated here in the 3D holographic reality in the material dimension on planet Earth, to really learn and become very experiential, but to try and retain their integrity as soul personalities. So a demon offers a negative, an inversion that perhaps causes a sense of anxiety. And this does touch on the intrapsychic transmissions that were known to be a major issue with the archons that is discussed in Gnostic Christianity. And obviously there's many connotations to the teachings and the learning of Yeshua ben Yosef, the Lord Jesus Christ, who was believed to have been an Essene, who had studied Gnostic Christianity, at the time really being called Gnosticism, and understood what the archons were. Which really is just another word for demon. The word archon just means Lord in the Greek language. So these are just higher demons, basically.
These are constructs, really, that have been ladled onto humanity and almost distorted into the framework of what whoever wants to control that, which seems to me like the Romans were the big part of that, the instigators. And then, you know, as we rolled on, I personally don't think the Roman Empire has disappeared. I feel, well, it did disappear, but it sunk
it's morphed over time.
Exactly. It changed into other...
The labels of the civilization changed, the wealth, the bloodline families, whoever they are, the policymakers, they just transition through. The same happened, you know, you can say that even the name of Lucifer, going back to the Sumerian mythology, looking at Akkadian mythology, Babylonian mythology, Assyrian mythology, and the transition and collapse from there, those civilizations in the Fertile Crescent, the Middle East, the Arabian Peninsula, into the time of classic Greece, and what happened in mainland Greece and the Greek islands, and the collapse of the Greek civilization, and then the emergence of the Roman Empire. So it's the rising and falling of all these different world empires over thousands of years, but the knowledge, the wealth, and the power transitions through the names of the various deities, whether they are male or female, just changes. The rituals are still to some extent the same. It's just the terminology changes. I think it's another part of this bizarre contradiction is the Roman general and Roman statesman Gaius Julius Caesar, who actually believed that Venus Pantheus was his direct genetic ancestor. So you have somebody like him who specifically instructed the mass genocide of the Celtic Britons and the actual Druidic priests in Albion or Britannia. And yet you have him hypocritically stating that you have this Roman goddess, Venus Pantheus, who was his direct genetic ancestor. So Gaius Julius Caesar was obviously a very complex individual with a rather
huge ego
persona. And a very large egocentric based set of characteristics. But then again, here we have somebody that committed massive amounts of evil against Homo sapiens or human beings, obviously in Western Europe.
You could even say some sort of possession over him, maybe.
Yeah, like so many of these kind of dictatorial characters from the historical narrative on planet Earth. You can even include people like, you know, Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin, and the list just goes on and on. So it's very interesting, though. What really fascinates me is the constant contradiction and perception. So Lucifer was the chief archangel, you know, within the heavenly kingdom, was cast out after the war in the heavens. And then the process through this vibrational transition through the 4D holographic reality of the astral plane into the infernal regions, that literally vibrationally just overlaps into the electromagnetic perimeter of the 3D holographic reality of the material dimension. So literally it interlocks, I believe, with some of the geomagnetic ley lines, the actual interconnections, the vortices, dimensional portals. And that transitional shift produced the thought forms that became Shaitan or Satan. And from that, and then so many of the angels that were also cast out from the heavenly kingdom became the demons, the providers of the dark messages that were there to cause immense mental and psychological suffering to human beings, because by doing that to humans, it was a way of them spiting, you know, or despising the universal creator, who had archetypally and energetically obviously created that, because what it really was a divergence for itself. That is the Lord God Almighty, to learn more, experiencing itself through the emergence of the Luciferian consciousness, you know, outside of linear space-time. it's a very kind of very profound level of metaphysical connotations that are going on here.
I think it's, understanding the world we live in this duality of dark and light, that the darkness is, as much as it's oppressive and can be very heavy on the human soul, it's actually a very good teacher. And if people listen to their inner self, and I think sometimes that's something to take note of. I'm not agreeing with evil. I don't agree with evil at all. But in that sense, if it teaches you something and it leads you to a more positive vibration, that's a beautiful thing. So this kind of manipulation of light is very intriguing, the way this is being set up as a construct. And I think people misunderstand it. I think they misunderstand what that is, and almost maybe that is part of the mechanism of it. So people do misunderstand it. So it sometimes takes some of own personal experience to actually be able to overcome certain things that you're challenged with, and
I think again, you see it is it's a psychological concept, the idea of the Luciferian consciousness and demons, but there's also, it's very tangible. I've actually observed demons in my own life. They do exist. I mean, remember, all these different life forms are different kinds of wavelengths that you can frequencies that you can attune to, beyond the visible light spectrum. And we have to remember that even if you just look at it from the kind of perception of classical mythology and Greek mythology and Roman mythology especially, why is it that Lucifer was predominantly depicted as a male figure carrying a shimmering torch? So he wasn't seen as the life form that literally radiated these photons of holiness from itself, its own, corporeal form, but from holding a shimmering torch. Now, I find it also interesting that in Greek mythology, the idea of Lucifer was quite different. So his name was Phosphorus.
Right.
So Phosphorus Olymbos became literally Lucifer Pantheus, which is the masculine aspect of Venus Pantheus. So interesting that if we look, for example, in, say, chemical engineering, you have in the periodic table, you have phosphorus, which gives off light. Once it's ignited, it actually gives off a very bright light, but it's a false light, if you like. It's not
chemically created light.
Chemically created, synthetically activated. And that I find also interesting. So it seems like a very apt name to have given that chemical element. So
in poetry, he was often portrayed as the Sunshine Herald, which I can't pronounce the names. Anatolius Kyriax.
Yeah, Anatolius Kyriax, the Sunrise Herald, and then in the Latin, it's known as the Praecus Solicitatus, meaning Sunrise Herald. So he represents the arrival of the photons of the daytime, the light waves of the daytime, pushing back the night sky. So everything that's there, the nebulae, the stars, the planets, the moons. And so we see this reemergence. Every day, in other words, was a rebirth of Lucifer rising in terms of a metaphysical concept. So, it depends on who you view looking at this subject. If it's somebody like Edward Alexander Crowley or Austin Osman Spare and so on, and many other occultists and ceremonial magicians, they found a great thrill, if you like, from the idea of trying to be tuning into Lucifer or trying to access Lucifer in their various satanic rituals. And other individuals will say, no, there's a great misunderstanding that the Luciferian consciousness is the infinite oneness. And then all of this is New Age disinformation.
Of course.
It's very specific and very clear within the Holy Bible, in the Old Testament, the New Testament, really our understanding of what Lucifer and therefore Satan is and demons.
Yeah.
And, we should fully appreciate that fantastic knowledge that has been given to us by prophets and teachers in the Holy Bible, and even the connections to the greatest story ever told about Yeshua ben Yosef, the Lord Jesus Christ, Jesus the Messiah, and who he really is. And obviously, Dolores Cannon went into a lot of detail in her 2 books, which was They Walked with Jesus and Jesus the Essene.
Yeah.
And this is all like past life regression studies from clients that underwent clinical hypnotherapy with Dolores Cannons and some of her colleagues, and the transcripts that arose from that. Fascinating, thought-provoking, highly reflective, humbling, wonderful to read about, and really instills the idea that, you know, beyond space-time, okay, you can say, if you go, I suppose, up into the higher astral and the electromagnetic perimeter around the heavenly kingdom, or what we call celestial hyperspace, there's no such thing as evil. There's only infinite oneness and infinite nowness. But the further you go into the slower vibrations and frequencies, where there's more energetic resonances slowing down and creating more condensed substances, divergence, and the various types of existences in parallel dimensions, parallel realities, parallel universes, here alone in this physical universe, where we have well over 4,500 trillion galaxies.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, the idea of that, the divine creation, and, you know, galaxies with 380 million stars and more each, it's mathematically, it's just off the scale.
Yeah, yeah. So what, with in regards to during the Christian period, how was it Lucifer became associated to Satan at this point? What do you think the reason for that is? What that was, that a control mechanism, do you feel?
Well, the concept of Lucifer Pantheist being the morning star, and Venus Pantheist, according to, you know, Roman statesmen, Roman emperors, the Roman people, being the evening star, was kind of morphed, and eventually it was interlinked with the Holy Bible, with the Old Testament and the New Testament, the idea that Lucifer, or Hallel, as it became known in the actual Hebrew language, and therefore that connotation, Hallel, with hell, the location of fire and brimstone, the infernal regions. So it literally was just a cultural morphing, a religious morphing over time. And, you know, when you realize that Hallel and Shaitan from the Hebrew language are really interconnected, because they are one and the same. Satan is the, if you like, is the thought forms, the resulting lower vibratory consciousness that emerged from the chief angel of heaven, Lucifer, who fell from the heavenly kingdom, was cast out, and he took with him vast numbers of angels that then mutated and fell through the vibrations into much more condensed vibrations in the lower astral from the heavenly kingdom. And again, how that connects to the Saturn hexagon isn't fully known, but I do believe there is a lot of very covert activity there going on in the solar system currently.
Yeah.
And I don't ask you to really go into it. I don't want to digress too much, but there's something to do with hyperdimensional physics, to do with the real understanding, the real essence and the understanding of biblical Christianity. Yeah. And really understanding the importance of Lucifer, something that should never really be underestimated or ignored as a symbol and an archetype of malevolence and evil, as opposed, you know, to that the actual complete realization of the creator within the human soul, which really is represented through Jesus Christ. So you've got these two opposing kind of dynamic forces at work, and then you have all the different soul personalities that come here and incarnate as Homo sapiens or human beings on planet Earth, where billions of individuals are being tested. And it's very, very tough. It's very difficult and tough for most individuals who are incarnations here on planet Earth. It is not an easy, the material world is not an easy place to get along in, and for most to retain their sanity and their mental health in any normal sense. Yeah. And so if you've got sort of demons or archons using intrapsychic transmissions that, you know, that maybe psychiatrists or counselors will say, well, that's paranoid schizophrenia. Yeah, that is multiple personality disorder, MPD. You know, that's bipolar, or that is something similar, and it isn't. It can be, but it isn't always. And I had to say this: it's interesting to note that in countries like Spain and Portugal, and countries like Italy, as well as in actually Greece, there's been a resurgence in the use of exorcism, especially in the Roman Catholic countries. So I know that, for example, in Italy, there's a mass inundation of requests by Italian Roman Catholics who are reaching out to Catholic priests, to the Jesuit order, to the Vatican city state, saying, please, we need trained Catholic exorcists.
Yeah.
You know, a son or daughter is, from their perception, they believe is possessed by one or more demons from the lower astral, and they want them to be cast out in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, and they want to be want their children to be saved. Now, they're not reaching out to the local healthcare system. They're not reaching out, all the time to psychiatrists and counsellors and psychotherapists. So that's also interesting to note what's happening here in the 21st century when we're in the digital age, and yet here we have all this now going on.
Yeah, and it's interesting how there is a rise in mental health, and there's probably never been the planet's never been as populated as it has, and it's almost like some of these souls, I feel, almost come into this life to recognize that evil and actually see it, and actually it's part of the process of our humanity. And that is possibly why we have so many people on this planet and so many souls, and so many people are lost because they're following the narratives that are given to them from the very darkness that is controlling them.
Therefore, there's a very famous phrase, as proud as Lucifer. That concept is based on the idea that the haughtiness and the arrogance of the chief angel of the heavenly kingdom that thought that it could usurp the infinite oneness and infinite nowness of the universal creator, which itself on a much more hyperdimensional level was really the universal creator, the Lord God Almighty, allowing that division to occur, that illusory division within its own infinite oneness and infinite nowness, to create further experiential understanding for itself. And this is part of this process. It's actually really just a vast process of hyperdimensional remembrance within the eternal mind of the universal creator in linear space-time over literally billions upon billions of years.
Yes.
So if you then take it further into the human mind, as proud as Lucifer, that connects to narcissism, self-absorbed thinking. And look at how selfish so many individuals are in the Western world now, where people are buried in their Android or iPhones.
But it's almost being molded like that, you see, and the way it's developed. And, it is not just one generation. This has happened over a few generations. And
it's taken a good 30 to 40 years, I'd say, going back in the Western world to probably about 1981, 82, 83, maybe 1984. And here we are in 2025, and you can see the result. And there's so much psychological dysfunctionality now.
Yeah, of course.
Because of this kind of encroaching collective and individualized narcissism and self-absorbed thinking going on. That's creating a lot of selfishness in the Western world. And
capitalism,
here in the United Kingdom of Great Britain, it's happening across Western Europe and definitely across North America.
Yes, very much so, Steve. It's and just so when we kind of look at this and we bring it down onto planet Earth, we can understand connecting it to the energetic grid of the planet, the way we have these ley lines, and we know that rituals and certain practices, dark practices, happen on ley lines and things like this. So they will do certain actions that will create the vibration. Do you think they're accessing, whoever's doing that, do you think they're conscious of what they're bringing in, or do you feel it's like almost like a form of mind control in themselves, that they're just doing what they think is right, these people? Or what do you think?
I would say they think that they know what they're doing, but thinking that you know what you're doing and actually understanding what you're doing are pretty much two different things. So the first is based on the filtered ego. A lot of the ceremonial magicians tend to be men. That's interesting. Of course. Yeah, so, obviously, hedge witchcraft is something that is predominantly practiced by, or was in quite a commonplace going back many centuries, by females. And, the male version, obviously, of a witch is a warlock. But, predominantly they were known as wizards or magicians or magic users.
So,
again, we're seeing all these different connotations and terms, but it all interconnects on one level or another back to the haughtiness of the Luciferian consciousness that is represented by, shall we say, Satan the meaning the opponent and the adversary, but that means it's in direct opposition to, or it's adverse to, literally divine love and the very spiritual rights that are innate to any soul personality, as really a minute expression through hyperdimensional resonance of the universal creator. And that's not just here on planet Earth, and that can be anywhere within the physical universe. And I do believe there are many star systems or solar systems in the physical universe where evil does not even exist.
No, I agree. So, there is.
You look at the incredible narrative of Howard Storm, the gentleman who had a profound near-death experience, or NDE, in Paris in north central France. And you see what happened to him, and we really understand that a Christ being can incarnate on literally millions, if not billions, of worlds in the physical universe.
Yeah, well, it would go the same with the demonic as well side of things. There will probably
absolutely
be dark planets as well. Yeah,
and I think I remember Merlin Willett from the movie Excalibur. Actually, I'm sort of paraphrasing, is stating that evil is always to be found in the places where you least expect to find it.
Yeah.
So in other words,
hidden in plain sight. Actually, that's
and the Jesuit order of the Roman Catholic Church. Then they talk about the noonday devil, and the phrase means that in the brightest sunlight, but perhaps in the very heart and the essence of summer, say through June, July, August, and the first part perhaps, or maybe the whole of September, maybe it could be sweltering. It could be like 31, 32 degrees, and there's gorgeous turquoise blue skies overhead. But that is when a lot of the evil could be happening in terms of ceremonial magic or various practices in Western occultism, where they're trying to summon, or individuals or groupings of rather nefarious people, or individuals are trying to summon certain kinds of negative entities or demons as a form of worship in towards Lucifer or Satan. A lot of people will say, well, no, individuals say, no, a lot of American people would assume that, and maybe devout Christians in many other parts of planet Earth would assume, well, these activities will be going on a full moon after midnight, but not always.
No, probably not at them times. It's probably happening, like you said, the most unexpected times when people maybe watching their best TV show, for example. That's a good example. I think that goes on quite a lot with television. There's a lot of subliminal messages going on in that program. And we obviously had Aleister Crowley and other occultists and people that were dabbling in all this dark type of magic. But where do you think, in the bigger scale of it, do you think this is, and something I feel this is an off-planet control that is almost come onto this planet and is controlling through these mechanisms and constructs? Do you feel that?
I think it's definitely hyperdimensional. I think there are key dimensional portals and intersections, not just of geomagnetic ley lines here on planet Earth. I believe there are geomagnetic ley lines on the planet Mercury, the planet Venus, the planet Mars, and obviously so it's not. I'm not exactly sure how geomagnetic ley lines would really resonate on the gas giants in the outer solar system, obviously around planet Jupiter, planet Saturn, the planet Uranus, the planet Neptune. Maybe it's just the actual rocky cores of those gas giants that would be relevant to. But we know that there are actual, shall we say, astromagnetic lines of energetic resonance that traverse literally thousands of light years and crisscross and actually probably interconnect to different star systems and solar systems, and also interlink to the various ethereal locations of the 4D holographic reality of the astral plane. And that itself can also include, shall we say, an astral universe. So we don't fully understand this. Western science is not going to be populated with academics that are going to be queuing up to give us this information from Oxford University or Cambridge University and so on. This is going to be out there for individuals going out and doing their own studies to really understand and discern and absorb such knowledge and really trying to find out what is actually happening. And I do believe, there is some kind of hyperdimensional presence. I believe there are conflicts beyond space-time in the astral plane that are definitely relevant, are really happening. But again, it's all open to speculation.
Yeah, it's always open to speculation, but you can see the madness that happens in the world and how insane situations are. Just the very fact that we have economies based on war and stuff like this. This is absolute insane reality, really, to be incredible that it even exists in that way. Energy, that we have to pay for energy, all these cost of living, all the stuff we've talked about. The English occultists there, with the 1800 period, do you feel that it was the age of enlightenment that was created? Do you feel that was a definite part of that kind of construct becoming another type of inversion, sort of?
I think so. All of it's just different words and phraseology, but ultimately there was a lot of really the age of enlightenment in some ways was really the new dark ages, because that does, we're not going to digress too much here, but obviously so many of the Sacred Wisdom podcasts you've done have been about Great Tartaria and the Old World Empire and its collapse. Obviously the first mud flood, second mud flood, third mud flood, the deletion processes, but also the covert retrieval of various gadgets and devices and mechanisms that were then squirreled away, and they were different aspects of the occult technology of Great Tartaria and the Old World Empire, not just in northern Russia, but also in the various colonies, that had existed in parts of Western Europe, North America, and South America, and so on and so on. And you've got to remember that even the phrase Great Tartaria, there's been so much rephrasing and renaming and relabeling, which is all part of the disorientation process of the policymakers. And you can say, well, what is controlling them? I'd say it's the same impulses of evil.
Yes.
And I think that does connect to the Luciferian consciousness. And therefore we can say that is a satanic consciousness, because if it's interleaking with the chief archangel that was cast out from the heavenly kingdom and was cast down and chained to the subterranean etheric reaches that are linked to the geomagnetic ley lines of planet Earth. And the idea of hell being subterranean, and Hallel from the Hebrew language, and Hallel itself meaning shining being or brightness in that aspect. So we have this continual contradiction going on, this dichotomy between good and evil and the perception of good and evil beyond space-time, and how it resulted in this, if you like, Satan emerging, the opponent, the adversary, that which opposes that which is adverse to that which is natural, which is the divine love, infinite oneness, the infinite nowness of the universal creator. And therefore, shall we say, in opposition to devout Christians, and to also to any other individual that has an intense divine love for the Lord God Almighty, but doesn't recognize themselves or define themselves as a Christian, or maybe some other religious sort of background that they might have. So this is a very intricate subject, and we may come back and obviously do another sacred.
Yeah, most definitely we will.
It's such a profound subject to talk about. We could talk about the idea of where the word the devil, the word devil came from. Which is also interesting, and that originally came from the Greek language itself. So there's layers and layers and layers of this, and it is fascinating. But there's so much information we've already given out and presented here in this Sacred Wisdom podcast that I feel that we've really given enough. And we cover it in the Luminous Worlds. We've got it in the book as well. There's chapters on it. But Stephen, is there anything else you'd like to add for this podcast? I think we've discussed everything really concerning Lucifer and Satan, and how it connects to Greek mythology, Roman mythology, and the Holy Bible. So I've said enough, really. And I feel it's, you're right with all this. What's happened is everything's become so convoluted. Facts have become mythology, and the idea, the concept of what we are is become so complex. And we've had all these other
forms of control, psychology, and all these different methods put in the 1800s, which really kind of created a new construct in our brains. And I think this is something, and everything we've talked about today is something for everyone to consider out there. You know, what is actually this? There's dark force around our planet, and it's something that we should all take into consideration, especially with what is happening. Been a brilliant podcast, Steve. Thank you so much. That's really interesting. As always, amazing research and information, and to all you, I hope it's getting everybody thinking and researching themselves and looking into things deeper, because, you know, we're not here to be afraid and fear darkness. We're here to understand who we are and what we are, and so we don't need to fear any situation. Everything will be okay. But for now, it's a bye for me.
And it's goodbye for me.